Welcome, everyone. We are excited to spend some time with you today going over the nitty-gritty of a complete college application. We will cover a wide range of topics and provide families with the foundation needed for a smooth application process and transference of supporting credentials from Holliston High School to individual colleges. We asked our seniors, how are you feeling about the college application process? And this is what we got. As you can see, they are feeling the stress of the college application season, and I am sure you are as well. We are here to help and support everyone, hopefully reduce some of your stress, and allow for some joy in this process as well. Okay, this is the complete application slide. This is a general overview of what's involved in a completed application to college. I'm going to give you a moment to look over this slide. As you can see, there are several aspects involved in a complete application. Anything circled in blue on this slide is a student responsibility. Anything outlined in red is a parent-guardian responsibility. And anything inside a black rectangle is a Holliston High School responsibility. A complete application involves student, teacher, counselor, and parent or guardian. From the slide, you can tell that most of this involves the student. This, of course, doesn't mean a student is on their own. Remembering that every student is different, some will need support in organizing the parts of the application and setting deadlines. They may need some help getting organized and figuring out what to do when. Others will need a second set of eyes on their essay or help brainstorming ideas for their supplemental essays. Use this graphic as a tool to keep track of all of the different pieces that need to be completed prior to your student hitting submit. We will go over all of the parts of a complete application in this presentation and answer some frequently asked questions at the end.
As previously noted, tasks in blue on this chart are the student's responsibility. It is important for students to know how each of the colleges on their lists accept their applications. For many, students can apply through the Common App or the Coalition app. However, there are some colleges and university systems that use their own institutional application. For instance, MIT, Georgetown, the University of California system, and the California State University system. Students will fill out their application with contact information, activities, and awards, and in some cases, they will be asked to self-report their grades rather than submit an official transcript from HHS. Some colleges will want this done directly in the Common App, typed in, or by uploading a JPEG or PDF, for instance, UMass and University of South Carolina, while other institutions like Penn State and University of Delaware will ask for self-reported grades in their own portal. In some cases, like the University of Oregon, students must report grades on their application and in the college's application portal. It is vitally important that students check and read their email after applying to see if they need to upload and/or report grades or other information in a portal that they create for themselves through the university.
One of the most important parts of the application process is the college essay, or as we prefer to call it, the personal statement. We call it a personal statement because it should be written from the heart. This is really about who the student is at their core. What makes them uniquely them? Is it their curiosity, their creativity, their perseverance, among many other wonderful traits? It could be about their passions and their interests, but ultimately it needs to be about the student. It is their voice in an application that otherwise is all about their accomplishments or somebody else talking about their accomplishments through the letters of recommendation. It is their opportunity to walk into the room and to sit down and to tell the admissions rep about who they are. After all, the admissions rep is looking at a computer screen all day, and so the essay, the personal statement, is really where the application comes to life. Given that, the personal statement these days, because of COVID-19 and interruptions to test taking and test optional admissions policies, the personal statement has become second to the transcript in terms of importance. It really speaks to whether that student is the right fit for the institution they've applied to. And as such, it should be the best piece of writing possible for that particular student. They should write it, edit it, rewrite it, and edit it until, for that student, it is as close to perfect as possible. This is where we're going to provide a word of caution. Many people with great intentions edit student personal statements in the college application process, and without meaning to over-engineer them to the point where they sound like an adult wrote the essay. College admissions reps can sniff these out a mile away by word choice, by topic, by structure. So please be careful in this process. The student voice and the integrity of that needs to remain clear. If you have any questions or concerns about your student's essay, they are welcome to bring it to their school counselor. We read many of these every year, and we have a good sense of what sounds like an essay a high schooler wrote and what sounds like perhaps an over-engineered, edited essay. The other opportunity is to have someone who doesn't know the student read the personal statement and then provide feedback on it. This was a recommendation from the UMass Lowell admissions rep. It's a great idea. Maybe somebody from the community, maybe a colleague, maybe even your mailman. Perhaps they can read the essay and they can provide either the top 3 adjectives to describe your student or a brief summary statement on what they learned about the student in reading the essay. The reason for this is because the admissions rep is a stranger to the student. And if the essay is to do its job, it needs to be written in an effective way that someone who doesn't know them can articulate and be able to reflect back who they are as a person, what makes them tick, and what makes them beautifully them. Supplements can be an important part of the application process. Depending on a student's college list, there may be no supplements at all, or there may be many, upwards of 6, 7, or 8. So your student needs to pay attention to what is required. If they do have a number of supplements, they need to plan their time wisely, as these are additional writing samples that will be reviewed and judged in the admissions process. Examples of supplements include extra essays, usually shorter than the traditional college essay or personal statement. But for example, UMass Amherst likes to ask the question, why do you want to go to UMass Amherst? Another example is, why do your personal qualities match our mission and match our motto? Why would you be a good fit for us? Those are some common questions that are asked frequently by the schools that require supplements. Sometimes the question, why do you want to go to our college or university, is listed as optional. But the very nature of that question doesn't make us think that it truly is. Our recommendation to our students is to always answer that question, whether it's required or optional, because our sense is that for bigger universities, they use that as a cutoff for students that might not truly be serious and interested about attending their university. So make sure to answer those and put the time and thought into them. There are sometimes optional supplements. For example, a number of universities ask for an optional resume. That truly is an option because the Common App, for example, has its own activity section where you can list your activities that you've done over the course of your high school career. However, some admissions reps really do like to look at a different format. And if you feel that the Common App activity section has limited you through its character count limits to describing your activities in a way that doesn't really reflect your participation, then maybe a resume is the best option. Google has some great templates for resumes out there, or you can always reach out to your school counselor. Test scores may or may not be required for a student's application. There are many test optional schools right now due to the testing interruptions from COVID-19. To see a full list of schools that are test optional, go to fairtest.org. They have a searchable database and list of the schools who have signed up for test optional status. However, there are some students who may be applying to a very specific program, potentially very competitive and very unique. If that is the case and test scores are required, there are still opportunities to take the SATs and ACTs. The SATs can still be taken in November and December, and the ACTs can still be taken in October and December. For a student's test scores to reach a college or university, the student themselves must send the test scores from their College Board or ACT account. The student will log into their account and they'll see the opportunity to send available test scores. Then they have to choose between regular speed and rush speed. Regular speed gets the scores to the schools within about 2 weeks. Rush speed gets the scores to the schools in 3 days. So it's important that the student pays attention to their deadline. Many schools actually have a secondary deadline, second to the application deadline, by which they must receive test scores. If you have a question about that, you should call the admissions office and ask them what that secondary deadline is for receiving test scores. The teacher letter of recommendation is not actually a required part of the process in some cases. A student should be doing research on the college or university admission page to determine the school's policy regarding letters of recommendation. There are some schools out there who want no letters of recommendation from anyone. They're more focused on the transcript. However, most schools require one letter of recommendation from an academic teacher. Maybe they have a preference for an academic teacher in math or science. Maybe they prefer a letter of recommendation from a counselor. And there are some schools that will take a letter of recommendation from anyone, a coach, teacher, counselor, it doesn't matter. Competitive and really elite schools may require 2 letters of recommendation. However, we don't recommend asking for more than one unless a student has to. The more letters of recommendation that are sent, the less time is spent reading them. In fact, students who send too many letters of recommendation, usually 3 or more, are often at a disadvantage. It really doesn't reflect well on the student when they send too many. In terms of asking for a letter of recommendation, this graphic shows asking in person, but the other option, and actually the preferred option, is to ask by email. A teacher writes these letters in their personal time, either during their prep time during the day when they're supposed to be prepping for classes, or during their personal time in stolen moments after they've put their kids to bed or late at night after they've done their grading. So they need to really think about whether they have the time to write a quality letter of recommendation. And writing an email doesn't put a teacher on the spot, but gives them time to really think about that and consider it. If the teacher says yes to writing a letter of recommendation, the student is then required to invite the teacher in Naviance and share their first deadline. The instructions for this process can be found in our procedural guide, which is on the school counseling website. The other important consideration is writing and sending a thank you note. This is really important. Again, as aforementioned, teachers write these letters of recommendation during their personal time, and they are not required to do so. So it's important that students show their gratitude. Teachers will be submitting their own recommendations to colleges, and if a teacher is not able to send a recommendation, the counselor can help with this. What is important to know is that even if a student applies 2 weeks prior to the deadline, the teachers have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the day of the deadline to submit their letters of recommendation. After submission, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the letter of recommendation to be logged as received. If a student has any questions about whether their teacher letters of recommendation have been submitted, they can check Naviance to see if it indicates that the letters have been submitted, but they can also either check the student portal that they are given access to track their admissions materials, or they can call the admissions office and ask the quick question, which they will easily be told either yes, they have it, or no, they don't.
Next up is the transcript release form. This is one of the most important logistical pieces of the process, as it triggers to your student's counselor that the student is planning on applying to a particular college by a particular deadline, and that the counselor will need to start preparing materials to be sent on the student's behalf. This includes letters of recommendation and transcripts. We do need a record of each school to which the student is planning on applying, and they can do so through the transcript request form. Each transcript request form will allow students to indicate up to 5 schools for which they would like to apply, and students can submit as many transcript request forms as they need. So for example, if a student is applying to 7 schools, they would fill out 2 transcript request forms, one that would include 5 schools and the second that would include the additional 2. Alternatively, students can also submit 7 individual transcript request forms. That's completely fine. Once the student fills out the transcript request form, they will receive a copy of their responses, the parent or guardian will receive a copy of the responses, and the counselor will be submitted a copy of the responses. Very important going along with this is that the form must be submitted no later than 15 school days prior to the student's first deadline. This doesn't include holiday or weekends, just school days, so it may seem like a good amount of time prior to the first deadline. So for example, for some of the big deadlines that have passed or are coming up, October 15th was one. The transcript request form should have been submitted by September 23rd. November 1st, a very popular early action deadline, transcript request forms are due on October 7th. This doesn't mean that the student needs to have applied by September 23rd or October 7th. Rather, it means that they intend on applying by the deadline they've indicated on the form, so October 15th or November 1st. Again, it doesn't mean that they are ready to go, it just means that they plan on being ready by that deadline. Very important with this is that 15 school days is because it triggers to the counselor that they will need to put together a letter of recommendation and any other materials that the student has requested to be submitted to the college. We all have a good number of students on our caseload. Some of us have over 50 each year of students that we need to write for. And with many of them who are planning on applying early to colleges, we will need to plan our time accordingly to ensure that we are able to write really thoughtful and helpful letters to the colleges. Counselors will submit all requested documents that are allowed on the transcript request form. So this includes, as I have mentioned, the transcript, the counselor letter of recommendation, and teacher letters of recommendation. And we submit those via Naviance. These documents are not available for the student to view, so they may get anxious and say, I don't see the letter in there. They will not. It only gets uploaded to the administrative portal, and then we will actually send it through our end. Students have also been emailed copies of their transcripts earlier in the school year, and we've asked them to verify them for accuracy and let their counselor know if there are any issues in terms of leveling or grades or anything along those lines. So if you have any questions about this piece, please make sure to contact your student's counselor. Your student has been emailed the transcript request form multiple times, but in case you are looking for it or the student needs assistance finding it, it can be found through the Holliston High School Counseling webpage. Once you are there, you'll navigate to Forms and Resources in the top right-hand corner. And once you're on that page, click on Transcript Request Form for current students. The form itself looks like this. It is a Google form. It can also be accessed through a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/transcript counseling.counseling.counseling.org/HHSTRF. So it is available on the screen here, again, through the counseling website. This is only a screenshot of the first page. There are a few additional pages where students will have to indicate the college, the city, and most importantly, the deadline. So counselors are aware of what needs to be sent, by when, and along with that, the student will also be able to indicate what documents need to be sent on their behalf. Another very important piece of the process is the Common App matching process. As we've discussed previously in this presentation, students are responsible for their pieces, which includes the actual application, whether it's Common App, Coalition, or the institution's individual application, any supplements, standardized test scores, and any fees associated with the application. The school itself is responsible for submitting school-related documents, so that can be transcripts and letters of recommendation. So there has to be a mechanism in place if the documents were to be submitted at different points for everything to connect in cyberspace and be added to a student's file and delivered to the reader at a particular school by the deadline. That's where the Common App matching process comes into place. It's important to note that no documents, this includes the letters of recommendation and transcripts, can be sent by the school on the student's behalf unless this matching process takes place. So this is a very, very important piece of the process, especially if the student is applying to Common App schools. We did meet with students at an assembly earlier last week, and we went through this process with them and asked students to follow along and do it with us. So hopefully the majority of students will have this done already, but a quick walkthrough of this process will follow. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware how this affects things and what to do, just in case. This process actually begins in the Common App. We ask students to navigate to their Common application. They will click on the My Colleges tab at the top and then navigate to one of the schools that they've added to their Common App and click on Recommenders and FERPA, which is along the left-hand sidebar. It's important to know that students only need to complete this process once through one of their colleges on the Common application. The answers that they indicate here will apply to all schools already on their Common application and all future schools that they add. Common App will then navigate to the FERPA release authorization screen. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it is required to be filled out on the Common App. This Privacy Act essentially gives students the right to view any letters of recommendation or documents submitted on their behalf once they are admitted to a particular school. Students can choose whether or not they would like to waive their right to access any of these documents. So it's important that this takes place here. Students will click on the Complete Release Authorization. Students will then be directed to the Release Authorization pop-up. And this first page will go through what they are agreeing to or not agreeing to with FERPA. Common App does a really nice job of outlining what FERPA is and what waiving their rights means or not waiving their rights means. So it's important that students take a little bit of time to read through this and make the best decision for them. Once they've read through everything, they can click Continue down on the bottom and be directed to the actual release authorization where they indicate whether or not they waive or not waive their rights to review any recommendations. This box at the bottom is important because it indicates their understanding that the answer they have checked off with this release authorization will apply to any other school on the Common App and any future schools they add to the Common App moving forward. So they can't change their answer to FERPA once they've completed this. Once this is completed, they will get basically a success message. This checkbox next to FERPA release authorization will come up that says that that has been completed. The next part of this process takes place in Naviance. Students will log into Naviance. They should all have the login information. They will be logging in with their Holliston High School email through single sign-on. They will click on Colleges I'm Applying to. And once they're in Colleges I'm Applying to, there should be like a magenta bar at the top that says Match Accounts. Once they click on that, they will be navigated over to Common App where they will indicate their email and their password that they use when they set up Common App. Common App will ask if they are agreeing to connecting their Naviance with Common App. They'll click Connect and then be navigated back to Naviance, where they'll receive a confirmation success message at the top, and then underneath colleges I'm applying to, it will say Common App has been matched with Naviance, and it will also indicate the FERPA status. Again, to reiterate, the high school cannot send anything on the student's behalf, particularly letters of recommendation, until FERPA has been done and Common App has been matched. So it's really important that this process is done. This can be something that can hold up a process after a student's deadline if it is not done. So we encourage students to get it done early in the process. They don't have to be ready to apply by doing this. It just means that they're planning on applying to some of these schools. The application process doesn't stop after the application itself is submitted. Students are still responsible for checking their email and responding to any additional requests that the college may have. So, for example, once a student submits their application, they will typically receive an email confirmation that the school has received their application. And then in addition to that, they may receive another email inviting them to set up an account through the school's portal. The web portal is an opportunity for the student to check status of the application. It's typically where the admissions decision itself will be released. Additionally, this is where some requests may come through. So for example, the biggest credential that is often requested of students after the submission of their application are their first term senior year grades for students that may have applied early action, or their first semester grades for students that applied regular decision. And this is often how this messaging and request is communicated. Sometimes the college itself will have their representative reach out to students directly, so they will do this via email. Really important that this is checked often by students. Now, we do recommend that students use a personal email address in lieu of the Holliston email address. This is for a couple of different reasons. First, the Holliston email is mainly how the school communicates with students, and the email can get clogged with different types of notifications, particularly Google Classroom notifications. So sometimes some important emails can be missed, and we don't want them to miss any of these emails from the colleges. Additionally, the Holliston email will turn off after students graduate, and sometimes colleges will be communicating with students, especially if that student plans to attend that particular school, with any important updates, orientation, etc. So it's important that it is an email that is able to be checked often and throughout the process. So we are encouraging students to stay on this.
Okay, and now for the parent-guardian sections. I would like to direct your attention to the parent areas which are indicated in red. In addition to the student responsibilities, as a parent, you can work to support your student through this process. Parents and guardians, we would ask for you to complete the parent brag sheet. This is an opportunity for you to brag about your student. And yes, we really do want you to brag. As counselors, we value the information that you provide, and as we write our letters of recommendation, the parent brag sheet and your input is essential. No information is off limits, meaning that you have seen your student grow throughout the years. They may have wonderful attributes that you would like to share. There may have been some weaknesses or a particular trying time that the student has overcome. We ask that you share this information with and for us. The brag sheet was emailed to families in the spring, and it can be found in the Holliston High School School Counseling website under Forms. Additionally, the financial aid process is also something that families can support to help with their student. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA can be done online, and it is available after October 1st to complete. The CSS profile is an additional form that some colleges require. While the FAFSA is a free application, the CSS profile does involve a fee. There are a number of resources to help families with the financial aid process. The Office of Student Financial Assistance is a great resource, as well as MEFA, Massachusetts Education Financing Authority, which has virtual presentations for families. There is a variety of resources that they offer, And we have links to that information on your student's Naviance account, and it can also be found at mifa.org. As part of the application process, there is also an application fee. Each application will incur a different fee, but it is part of the application. There are fee waivers available for families who may qualify, so be sure to reach out to your student's counselor for more information. In the school counseling office, we are trying to connect with our students and families in a variety of ways. We have created a very robust high school counseling website for families to use throughout high school, as well as a YouTube channel with links to recorded videos. We have been encouraging students to join Remind so that we can connect with them easier, and have created an Instagram account at Holliston SCO, so be sure to check out those resources as well. And now, some frequently asked questions that we hear in our offices year after year. Okay, this is a question that we get all the time. What is the difference between applying early decision and early action? Early decision plans are binding. This binding agreement involves a contract that the student, parent, or guardian, and counselor signs, indicating that if accepted, the student must attend that college. On the other hand, early action plans are non-binding. Students receive an early response to their application, but do not have to commit to the college until the normal reply date of May 1st. Colleges will post information regarding early decision and early action, so be sure to check the specifics for each college. Okay, another great question that we get, should we file a FAFSA even though we won't qualify for financial aid? Yes, the recommendation is to apply for financial aid. According to the MIFA website, there are many considerations that go into financial aid offerings, and no one other than the family in the financial aid office knows the true financial picture of each family. Additionally, factors such as specific colleges where the student has been accepted and a student's academic credentials may come into play in the financial aid process. In order to receive a federal direct student loan, a student must file the FAFSA. All students who file the FAFSA, regardless of financial status, can borrow a federal direct student loan. As well, some state merit-based programs, such as the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship and college scholarships, require that students file a FAFSA. If the family's financial status changes significantly, it is far easier on the student and the family to seek financial aid consideration if there is a financial aid application on file. It can be a burden in the time of crisis to start the financial aid process. So yes, once again, the recommendation is to apply for financial aid.
Before we conclude today's presentation, we'd like to send out a reminder to you to encourage your students to clean up their social media. Although admissions officers don't make it a habit to go and find students' profiles on Instagram or Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever the platform, it's not unheard of, especially if a student references their social media in their application. So it's important that their digital footprint matches the persona they want to put out there through their application. It's important that students go and clean up their social media, Google themselves, see what's out there, and do the best that they can to ensure that the person they are representing themselves to be is who lives on the internet as well. A few next steps and reminders for you. All of this information is available in written format through our website or through the following link, tinyurl.com/HHS procedural guide. The Holliston High School Application Procedure Guide goes through all the pieces of this process, as I said, in written format, including screenshots, checklists, and a list of popular deadlines and dates by which the students would need to submit their transcript request form. It is very helpful in walking through the process, and we encourage you to keep this handy throughout the process. Secondly, encourage your student to make an appointment with their counselor if they haven't done so already. All of our calendar links are available on the Holliston High School School Counseling website or throughout the building with QR codes. This is the best way for students to make an appointment, but of course, if there are any questions, you can have your student email their counselor. And lastly, remember, this is a process. Not all students will be ready to apply at the same time. Oftentimes, students feel pressured because they see other students applying early, and that means they have to apply early. It's completely fine if they're not ready to apply by November 1st for them to use a regular decision deadline. Remember, everybody's different, and it's a process for everyone. We'd like to thank you so much for taking time to watch this. If you have any additional questions, all of the counselors' names and caseloads are on the screen, as well as their email addresses. All of this information is available on our school counseling website, which can be accessed through the Holliston High School website or through the following URL, tinyurl.com/HHSSCO, the Holliston High School School Counseling Office. Thanks so much. Have a great day.